Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Iris Acker, and I'm your host tonight. Before we meet our illustrious guest today, let's meet the panel. Michael McKeever. He's a playwright, he's an actor, he's a set designer. I could go on and on. Karen Stevens. Karen is an award-winning actress. Bill Hirschman. He's a critic, and he's an arts journalist. And meet our guest today, choreographer Ron Hutchins. Ron, it's so wonderful to have you back here in Florida.
Thank you so much for having me back in Florida.
Ron, everybody wants to know, every choreographer starts as a dancer? That's a question mark. I know you did.
Yes, ma'am, I did. I started as a dancer when I was actually 17 years old. I had a career as a dancer well into my early 30s, and luckily for me, I made the gracious transition from dancer to director choreographer.
You know, as a dancer, I really don't have the imagination. I mean, that's what it really takes to choreograph. I think that's a whole other thing. While you were dancing, did you say, oh, if it were done this way or that way, or I could do, I mean, how do you know that you can do it?
I sort of follow my instinct. I'm a firm believer that everyone can dance. I've always believed that, because when you think about it, everything in our lives involves movement. Everything, no matter where you are. And even if you're in the back, now there are some people that do not have rhythm, but there's a lot to be said about everyone dances to their own drum.
Oh, I love that.
So I'd like to find the best in people and bring that out, because if you don't, then otherwise you're just really wasting time and you really haven't done your job. So I try to be really smart when I walk into a room, regardless of the level, whether it's a professional level or an amateur level, and I watch people. I watch on breaks. I watch them in the auditions, and I go from that and try to create the show and try to keep it plot driven, and then everyone's happy, because if they succeed, then I succeed.
Well, that's a talent in itself, getting non-dancers to dance.
Yeah. It's challenging.
Really?
It's challenging.
I mean, I know some big stars who were great singers and couldn't dance, and they had to have someone like you help them along.
Well, it's always part of it, too, because if you're dealing with a singer or an actor that moves well or doesn't move at all, then it's senseless to come in and require them to do pirouettes and splits. That's not where they live. So you have to find the street they live on and be sure that you guide them to success. I'm a firm believer in that. I always think that if I look at the choreography on stage and it's not working, it's not the fault of the actor. It's my fault. Wow. Because then I haven't done something right. And because I know how it feels. Choreography is a feeling to me. It's not necessary. It's visual, but for me, it's a feeling. I have what I call my tear moment. And it doesn't matter how simple the movement can be. When I see the actor connect with the movement, and what I mean by the connection is not only are they connecting with the movement, but they're connecting with the audience, the movement, and themselves. That's my tear moment, because that means that it's coming from the heart. And if it comes from their heart, then that means it's reaching everyone there. I firmly believe that. You know, you can be technical as much as you want, but if it doesn't come from a place in your heart, then it means absolutely nothing.
Well, we have some video, but before we show it, let's tell everybody, where was this shot?
This was shot in Beijing, China. Yay, thank you, Joe. It was shot in Beijing, China, and I was invited last year to go to Beijing, China to choreograph How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I flew in September for 2 days for auditions, which I was totally just elated, and I went back at the end of the fall for 7 weeks and put the show up in Beijing and was invited back again in March because the show was so successful, they moved it from Beijing to Shanghai, and it's still running.
Let's watch it now. Let's watch. Oh, how did they find you? Really, when I think of it, do you speak Chinese?
Not at all. It's weird how they found me. I was resident choreographer at Arkansas Repertory Theater for 17 years. And a gentleman, Joe, actually found me. Joseph Graves is the director's name. He had seen my work at Arkansas Rep literally 8 years ago. And I was contacted by the artistic director, Robert Hupp, from Arkansas Rep, and he said, Joe was an actor here and was a fan of your work. He's been a part of this international program in China that actually started with Shakespeare, and he started it 11 years ago, I think he said, and he said that he knew when he did his first big musical that he wanted to collaborate with me. I had never met this man in my life. Ever. So he contacted me by phone, and we had a wonderful conversation. I sent him a resume, and the rest is history.
How did they choose how to succeed in business? It would seem interesting that a communist country would choose how to succeed in business.
I think that was sort of part of it, because I mean, even though it is a communist country, that was part of it. But that was it. Also, it sort of reflects where they are too, because their culture can relate to that. Mm-hmm. You know, it would be hard for them to do other things, but their culture relates to that. I don't know. It was a decision between he and Ivy, who's the producer, Ivy Yang. I don't know how they chose it. I'm glad they did.
I got to ask though. It's almost a softball question, but the idea that dance transcends language.
Yes.
Did you find that to actually be true, or is that just a cliche?
Yes, I did find it to be true. I thought that my job in the chain was the easiest in some ways because my job is visual. Mm-hmm. There were some of the actors that did speak English, and some fluently, but some not at all. And so in order for me to communicate with them, all I had to do was be physical. However, there was someone there, if I made a correction, that could translate that for me. But also, emotion comes from the heart. It goes back to the heart thing. If you're trying to communicate something and you're angry about it, then that's going to transcend with them. You know, but I thought it was easiest for me. Now, the director, he's been there 13 years, Joe, and doesn't speak a word of Chinese at all. So he had to have everything communicated for him. And luckily for me, I could just move and say, no, do this. And I did learn how to count. Air, say, here. Which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I couldn't get 5, 6, 7, 8. And I learned ni hao. And ni hao is hello. And I learned xixia. Xixia, which is thank you.
Yes.
But the most wonderful thing one of the most wonderful things they said is when I would give a note, they would say, we will work harder. And I found that to be really magnificent. I went, oh my God. Are you serious? Yeah, and they were really funny. They said once, Ron, you're a good choreographer, but you are son of beach. Beach not, and they were making a joke. It was very funny. And it took me a minute, and I went, it was hilarious. It was very funny to me. They were great. And I have a family there now. And I'm honored to say that. And I was honored to represent myself and really to represent our country. And I never looked at it like that until it was expressed that way to me.
That's beautiful. That's lovely. Ron, when you approach each new project, whether it be in China or here in South Florida, how do you approach it? When you're doing a show like How to Succeed, do you have in mind what you're going to do for each number, or is it something that evolves as you get to know the cast?
It's a little bit of both. I always meet with the director, and my first question is concept. And my most important question, if I've never worked with that person, is how do you like to work? Because that way, if you want a jitterbug and I'm giving you a waltz, then I'm doing the wrong thing. Once the director and I sit down and we talk about the concept, then I go from there. And I will do my research. YouTube is a magnificent thing. However, YouTube can be a trap because you can often get caught in what someone else has done. However, if you aren't quite sure where to go, or you and the director are not sure, it's a wonderful encyclopedia. But I usually just sort of go for, I try to think about the plot, what the song is supposed to say, and go from there. It's the smartest thing to do. And I have what I call a 6 to 8 week rule out. So if I know I'm starting in November, I'll start doing my work. I'll be thinking about it the whole time, but I really dive in 6 to 8 weeks before. And I will spend an hour or two each day, even though I may write it down, I may not, but I'll start thinking about it. And if I have questions, I'll talk to the director and think about the casting that I have. And, as that goes, casting changes. So, you can have a group of dancers this week, and then next week 4 of them are different. Right. So whatever you have planned may not work. So you have to also be prepared to think well on your feet to be sure that it works.
I'm assuming it changes when you get into the rehearsal hall.
Yes, it does. It does, because it can look magnificent in my dining room mirror. It can look great there, and then you get there and you put it on them and you go, oh my God, did I really do that? But I try to approach it that way, and it's fun that way, and I try to be collaborative. I don't ever I love to collaborate with the director as well, but I listen to the actors in the room too, because I'm not the only creative one in the room. We work together as far as nobody works for me, and I don't like to look at it as though I work for anyone. I like to look at it as a community. Now, that gets tricky because you have to be sure that, you got to be sure, because then all of a sudden ideas come from everywhere, but somebody can have a better idea than you do, and then that can span into something else. So I try to open that up because I'm respectful of all of the creative minds in the room.
Who's your favorite choreographer?
Oh, God, I have a couple. I love Rob Marshall, of course. Rob Marshall is probably my absolute favorite. Of course, we were all influenced by Fosse, but Rob Marshall is probably my favorite.
Do you follow in his style?
To some extent, I think so. I hope so. I think he's plot driven. I think he's inventive. I think he creates shapes he creates parabola shapes. That if you're familiar with the dance company Parabolas, they can take bodies and make words that are magnificent. And I really, probably my favorite choreographer of all times is Gower Champion. Because Gower Champion, when you think about 42nd Street, or you think about Hello Dolly, especially in Hello Dolly, when you look at the Waiter's Gallop, it is perfect. It is the perfect collaboration of dance, props, plot, singing, set, scene, costumes, everything. And you look at that and you go, my God, how magnificent is that? Gower Champion probably would be. And I think Rob Marshall really is a lot like him, which is why I love him as well. Because in today's society, there's so many choreographers and so many different styles. But, I'm old school. I like the old-fashioned stuff, where everybody comes out and sings in the big chorus. I like that, so.
We both started dancing late. I started when I was 14. What pulled you toward dance?
I was an acting major in college, and a gentleman by the name of Mike Malone. We never did musicals in my high school. We always did plays. And I was at a community theater, Karamu Theater, and it was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen dancers in person. I'd see them on television, and I was truly that chorus line guy. I would see it on television in my grandmother's living room, whatever, try to do whatever it was. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was at the Karamu Theater, and I would go in the scene shop and try to do what they were doing. And I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no idea that Mike Malone was watching me. He was the director, and he went on to he founded the Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts, and he's passed on now. He was watching me, and I had no idea. And he said, Ron, if you took a class, you'd be good. I was 17 years old, and I said, well, my parents don't know where the resources are. He paid for my very first class. Wow. I will never forget it. Thank you, Mike. He really did. And my teacher's name was Pearl Johnson. I was 17 years old, and I had modern dance on Wednesday nights from 7 till 8:15. Like a 6-week thing. And then I went to college as an acting major, and we had to take dance as a requirement. And that's when it really hit. And I was pulled out of a jazz class because I thought I was good. Oh, it's awful. Because I had no technique. I see what they saw now. I had a lot of potential, but there was no technique. And the jazz teacher pulled me out and said, you are not allowed to take any dance until you take ballet for 1 year. And I did, and it changed everything. And I found myself to be more employable as a dancer because I'm little, you know, and I have always had this husky voice. So as a dancer, I could walk in the door. As an actor, they'd go, well, he's kind of little. And so it was easier for me. And I think it's always been there. It's when I think back, and especially working with kids, it's always been there, and it's never gone away. So
that's interesting. But can you talk a little about, you have worked with professionals at the highest level of competency, and you work with third graders, or you work with third graders. Talk about how you adjust your teaching and your choreography technique.
I don't. And that's what's really, that's what I pride myself in. I will not insult anyone by what they say, choreographing it down, dumbing it down. I will take you to your fullest potential because it takes me to my fullest potential. When I work with the third graders or 8th graders, it challenges me more than working with professionals, but also one and the same. Because you have to figure out when you're working with an 8th grader that doesn't do pirouettes, you have to figure out how to teach them how to do it and how to make them feel successful. And in the process of doing it, I look at them and I go, okay, well, that's going to look good. It's the same thing in the middle of it. Because you can have a great professional dancer that doesn't look good doing a single pirouette. I approach everything the exact same because they, in the 3rd grade, they get the same opportunity that you do as a professional. Now, the professional has more experience. There is that to be said, but they don't always necessarily have the heart. When you're dealing with the high school kids, their soul is in it. And after a while, some performers become bitter. Not all, but some of I've done this before, especially if you get the ones that I love to call the cookie cutter performers that have done this role 15 times. They are married into doing it this way. Well, when you deal with non-professionals, you are challenged to really find the plot and really center on what it's about. And you can't fall back on what you know. And so the comparison is the same, and I love that. It's the biggest challenge that I have, and I learn the most from working with the non-professionals. I learn the most because I see the struggle and I see the frustration, but I also see the success. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing is better than to see a guy that, I call it sassle, same arm, same leg. You know? And the thing is that I sometimes I go, guys, because just walk. Just walk. Because you'll give them a combination and it'll be a chasse, and you know, it's opposite up, and they'll go, and I go, I go, guys, how is that possible? Just walk. But you say dance to them and they go, oh my God, I gotta breathe. Just breathe. And it's as simple as that. And that's why I really believe that everyone is a dancer. You know, it's challenging, but I like to bring everyone to the finish line because it brings me to the finish line.
You're a teacher as well. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't only teach, I mean, I don't know any other choreographer who would, unless when they have to, when they're told when they have a star, and they say, no, you'll have to show her how.
Well, you know what else it does, too? It makes me refine the element. Every time I do it, it makes me go back to square one. And it's a new thing that I'm really teaching my students now when I work with them. You must always go back to ballet 1. Because it's the foundation of everything. And that's what I love the most, I think, about really working with the kids, is that it always brings me back to the truth. A plie is a plie in ballet. It never changes. And if you don't have that, then you have nothing. You have a weak foundation. And a lot of times, you know, people love I love hip-hop and all that, but you have to have technique. Sure. You have to have technique. It's the same with a vocalist. It's the same with an actor. You know, you have to have that technique, and if you don't have it, you don't have it. And another thing with teaching the kids is that I love to tell them, you're a package. You're a package, guys. You're not a dancer? Why would you pigeonhole yourself as a dancer? You have to walk in that room and let these producers know that you are a package. You are a singer, a dancer, and an actor, because you have to act to be a dancer. You have to act to be a singer. You're a package. And the more you know how to do, the more marketable you are to the producer that has a job to offer you.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Along those lines, as times change and music changes, do you find that your choreography evolves to keep up with the times and the change?
Yeah, musical theater, I think I still can live where I live in the old school stuff. It becomes challenging sometimes in the high school setting if I'm doing a dance workshop, because they love hip hop. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. They can be 8th grade, 7th grade, they want to hear. And I think that stuff is great, but I try to take them back, and it never works. I had a thing like that. I have to answer your question, but I always have to go, okay, guys, tell me something that's good about hip-hop besides the beat, you know? And they don't always have anything. I'm always trying to get them to listen to Ella Fitzgerald, and they don't want to hear that. So to answer your question, yeah, because but I have to do that's when I have to use YouTube as a source, you know, and I can do it, but it takes me a minute, you know, because now they've got the nay and the whip and all that stuff, and they are all doing it. It doesn't matter what's good, but they don't do pirouettes. So I try to be sneaky too. I'll throw that move in there, and then I'll throw a pirouette in after. And that's how you get them. That's how you catch them.
Do you still perform at all?
Oh, God, no.
I mean, I would. All right. So the question then is, do you get frustrated when you see someone doing something and you go, you know, I could have done it better than that. I can do it better than that.
I don't get frustrated with that. I think I try to follow my gut, but I'll say, God, think about it like this. And there's especially in the school thing, you have to almost spoon feed it. No, I need you to do it like this. Or you say, well, you're walking down the street, but you walk down to the right side or the left side. You know, it's common sense. Okay. I loved performing. I always thought that I said, well, yeah, I was like every other kid. I'm going to be on Broadway. And when I think about it, that wasn't my journey. That wasn't my journey. And I remember talking with my dear friend Eric Alford about that. We'd gone to see The Color Purple in Miami, and I had a ton of friends in that, and we were all the same age. And when we left the show, I was bawling. I will never forget it. And I said, oh, my God. I thought that I missed the boat. And I had lived here for 5 or 6 years. And Eric said to me, you don't see it from where I sit. And I didn't get it. And my partner said the same thing to me, Karen. He said, you don't see it from where everyone sits. That was not your journey, because I wanted something that was not for me. I ended up exactly doing what I was supposed to. And now what's happened is now my friends that were in The Color Purple that are my age, which is 950, now they're calling me going, how did you get this school? How are you doing this? So what ended up happening for me was my destiny and is my destiny. And I'm proud of that. I do miss performing sometimes, you know, because there's nothing like that. But that prepared me to do what I'm doing now. At least I hope, and I hope it continues to do that.
When you choreographed your first full-length musical, how daunting was it?
I was devastated.
Because, when I was, in University Dance Company, we had to we had to learn choreography, we had to choreograph. It was one number,
that's
but
right.
You have a full show with multiple numbers. And I know you do one at a time, one step at a time, until you have a full, but really, when you're facing that,
I'm trying to even remember what show it was. It's been so long ago, the first full musical. Mm-hmm. But I think it was because you really don't have a library. The only library you have is what you've done, so you can only do pas de bourrées for 2 counts of eight. A pivot turn for 1/8. You can't do anything else. And so I can't even remember what show it was, but there's a difference. There is the one number you can do, but you find yourself challenged because you don't have the library. Joseph was probably the first show that I'd ever done that I knew I had the goods, because it is consistent in movement. And because when I saw the show, I didn't like it. This show is retarded, and then I got to work on it, and I went, oh my God, it's a continuous poem.
Yes.
It's a poem.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep moving it along.
It must be wonderful to be there on an opening night with a show that you've choreographed and to see that poetry, that storytelling that you talked about. Talk about that. That sounds wonderful.
It is wonderful, and I get a little shy at that thing, and I will hide at intermission, and because it's so not about me at that point. It is about what the audience is looking at. And it lets me know when I'll sit back and I'll sit with Cameron and I'll look and I'll go, well, wow, okay, that's good. And I know what's right and what's wrong because it's live theater. Usually it's always dead on. And I get my tear moment because I will think about, well, okay, that's so-and-so over there. I remember when she cried because she couldn't get that. But it is magnificent. And to really see how the audience embraces the show and embraces the performers because that's what it's about. You know, it's not about us. It's about what we give to the audience and how the audience receives us, you know?
Ballet is a story without song,
yes,
without speech. Ballet is the epitome of choreography, telling the story in dance.
Yes.
And you're doing it as seen through the eyes of Ron. So that's the only way, to me, I can see each choreographer tells the story through their own eyes.
Yes.
Or their own imagination.
Yes.
So the same show can be done so many different ways.
Yes. And I've worked on shows. I've worked on Joseph 2 or 3 different times. Well, the first cast that I did it on, I have a foundation, but the second group deserve their own foundation.
And
They deserve their own foundation. I just had a conversation with the kids in Singing in the Rain about that. I said, I do not believe in copying. I mean, you can use it again as that, but I said, those people, they earned that choreography because they sweat for that choreography. So you need to earn your own choreography and sweat for that.
You know what's interesting? Let me tell you what's interesting. I'm sure our audience said, oh, I wish they would ask him, or I would like to know. You know, it would be good if you gave a little seminar.
I would love to.
Just questions, just to ask me as we are here, because we have to leave, and yet I'm sure each of us have another question in mind. I hope that you enjoy being educated with our entertainment. That's what we choose to do for you and bring you each week. So we encourage you to watch us every week. And if you really want to know what's going on in the world of theater and dance and everything in South Florida, we encourage you also to go to FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. We thank Bill Hirschman for that. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.